Okay, good afternoon or good evening, everyone. My national coordinator, Dr. Orwell, my
Dr. Soas,
chairman,
can we see you? Your video is off.
apologies. Apologies about that. I hope you can see me and hear me clearly.
Yes, we can.
Thank you very much. So good evening once again, my national coordinator. Good evening, my chairman, Dr. Chibu. You are doing a very good job, as usual. Thank you so much for putting this together. Excuse me. All right, so without wasting further time, my name, of course, is Dr. Osazee, and I'll be doing the presentation today. I want to also thank the first presenter, Dr. Hadi, for doing a very, very good job. He helped us to deal with the principles or the fundamentals as it concerns contact lens. I hope my voice is audible. I'm loud enough.
Sure, it is.
All right. Thank you so much. So I want to appreciate the first presenter for giving us a very good foundation. Whatever I'm going to be saying today typically is based on what we heard on Wednesday. And so I will not be going into details as far as general contact lens fitting, according to the guidelines for contact lens fitting, general guidelines basically. We already heard that on Wednesday. So I'll be focusing on this very, will I say, I don't want to call it new because it's not actually new, but I think it's an area that a lot of us, don't even dare to go into it. We don't go into general contact lens fitting anyways, not to talk of going into fitting contact lenses for presbyopes. So it is an area that a lot of us don't go into. So I'll try as much as I can to see how I can break this very mighty mountain down, because if you practice contact lens fitting, I mean in general contact lens fitting, there's no reason on earth why you cannot fit multifocal contact lenses for your patients. So the main objective of today's presentation will be to talk about principles, implications, and guidelines for contact lens fitting, especially for presbyopes. So our focus is going to be on presbyopes. So, common thoughts. What is the thinking of a typical presbyope? There are quite a number of them. One of them would be that they want to try to dodge or try to escape aging. In fact, sometimes when I tell patients that they need glasses, sometimes they're like, why now? I said, you should even be thanking God that they are growing old, because presbyopia is not a disease in itself, but an age-related condition. So, but most times the typical presbyope is worried about growing old. They want to remain as young as they were, whereas that's not what it should be, or that's not what it is. The good thing is that we grow old, but we still remain healthy. So most times, presbyopes want to escape any challenge according that is associated with aging. Another common thought for presbyopes is that they search for any means that would make them maintain their beauty, their appearance, all the sagging skins and all of that. They want something that would help them take that off. They don't want to come to terms with reality. I'm sure someday, those of us that are still bouncing up and down, running up and down, we have all gray hair. I will be talking very slowly soon. So it's one of those realities that must come. They don't want to identify with the physiological or psychological changes. They also want to avoid anything that has to do with bifocals. Remember, bifocals, the notion about bifocals is that it's for old persons, for old people. So whatever you need to do to help them feel that they are not old, you do. And this is one of the reasons why this aspect of eye care is very, very, very necessary and important. So they want to always feel as if they're young. In their 20s, they want to feel very, very young. This is a common thought. Now, with that understanding, with this thinking of presbyopes, then the onus lies on us as practitioners to ensure that we give or we help maintain these thoughts. Though they are not realities, we have to help them, because the more you give patients what they want, the more you satisfy them, and of course, the more business you are in. So with introducing this subject or this module, we know that presbyopia that is why I believe that optometrists can never run out of business, because every year you have over about 600-700 persons, that turn presbyopic. 600,000, I mean, turn presbyopic every year. Okay, that is just for Nigeria statistics, although still not very founded, but it's more globally. So we as optometrists, our value can never go down. Okay, but globally we have about 2 billion presbyopes currently, and of course, this value will continue to increase as people live longer, as the age expectancy, for man continues to grow. And at the same time, people also are working later in life. Not here in Nigeria, if you look at the Western world, you still see very old people driving their cars. See a man, a woman of 87, 90 years, still driving themselves around. So some of them don't want to, just like I mentioned earlier, they don't want to give up. They don't want to believe that they can't do anything. So you see them still striving to be independent. You see them striving to do all the things they usually do when they were younger, and especially as it concerns their vision. So sometimes they ensure that they don't need anything to make them feel. They don't need anything. So you still see them doing all the tasks, that they were doing prior to when they became presbyopes. They still use a lot of digital devices. They still do their work. Some of them, after if they have retired from the service, they may still go into their personal businesses or something. They don't just want to remain, docile because of age. So correcting presbyopia in a way that will not make these patients or these clients feel as if they are old should be our concern. And trust me, multifocal contact lens is one of the way out. There may be other ways out, but this is one of the way out. So it should be noted overall that the principle and criteria for selecting contact lens material, replacement frequency, and wearing schedule is similar for both presbyopes and non-presbyopes. So you see, like I said earlier, all the things I'm going to be saying here today has been founded by the first presentation. So if you miss that presentation, thank God we are all mentors here and we're familiar with the part 1 of our contact lens module. So I'm not going to be saying anything outside that. So the wearing schedule, everything except for some few dynamics which I'm going to be pointing across to us this evening. The eye care practitioner, okay, this is eye care practitioner. One of us asks that I give the full meaning of ECP. So it's eye care practitioner. So every eye care practitioner should seek to optimize contact lens comfort. That's one of our vision or one of our goals as it concerns our clients. It's not just all about good vision, but comfortable vision, good and comfortable vision, as well as ensuring that it is very convenient, cost-wise, and of course, have minimal, underline that word minimal impact on ocular physiology. Why? Because till date, a lot of research still going on about the woes, WOES, of wearing contact lenses. It's not all, that's why some persons feel it's not safe, but those of us that are practitioners and are professionals in this field know that it is safe if it is worn as it should be worn, right? So minimal impact. So if you wear it well, it still has its own impact, but it's minimal. That should be our goal. So multifocal contact lenses in presbyopia may take longer than others due to the variables such as the pupil centration, multiple power options, and all of that, dominance in terms of eye and all of that. So these are the things we're going to be paying attention to in this meeting. These are the available options for correcting presbyopia, over spectacle, monovision, bifocal contact lenses, and of course, multifocal contact lenses. Modified monovision is the same as monovision, just a bit of an addition. But our focus is not on over spectacle. That's just simply wearing your spectacles over your contact lenses. Okay, so you have distant contact lens on, and you wear your presbyopic spectacle or your ads over the contact lens. That's what over spectacle is just about. Monovision is where you wear contact lenses in one eye, and the other eye is meant for the other vision. So you have to prioritize which vision. The patient has to prioritize actually which vision is demanded most often. Distant vision, near vision. That determines which of the eye. And of course, you need to know the dominant eye to know which eye to put the distance correction and the eye to put the near correction. So that's for monovision. But bifocals and multifocals is a bit different, and that's what we're going to be focusing on today. So these are the fitting guidelines. I will not stress on a lot of these points because it's been stressed on already. Just mention a few of them that is unique to our presentation this evening. For patient selection, case history is very, very important because in case history, you are able to identify most of the things. A wise person once said that if you do a proper case history, then you will be able to have, in fact, solve that patient's concern by about 50%. So you need also the visual needs, the objectives and expectations, lifestyle, motivation. All of these are important in contact lens treatment. Now, how do you select your patient? First, you must be able to identify based on what you have in front of you. Is this patient easy to fit? Is this patient difficult to fit? You must be able to identify that because that would also help you on how to go about it. Now, for the easy to fit patients, these are some of their qualities or some of their characteristics. One of them is that cylinder is usually about 1 diopter or less. So if you have a cylinder, if the patient has it, so just give me a minute, I'm in the office. Just 1 minute. Apologies, the phone was ringing constantly. I needed to make sure someone is there. Sorry, my chairman, can we still hear me, please? It's raining cat and dog here. Hello?
Yeah.
All right. So I'll say that one of the easy to fit qualities is when the cylinder is less than 1 or about 1, because at this point you could actually do spherical equivalent. Excuse me. So if you do spherical equivalent for this patient, you may still be able to get the patient to the expected visual acuity. Expectations consistent with the everyday visual demands. So if the patient's expectation is consistent with what they do all the time, basically, then they can be easily fitted. And also, if they have motivation, if there's something that is motivating them to fit contact lenses, sometimes it may be, oh, I don't want to wear big glasses or something. Maybe they saw a friend that likes to wear contact lenses and they admire it. So something, something positive moves them. They will be easy to fit. They will accept it. Even if they tear when you are fitting them, they don't mind because they are motivated. When they have less critical visual demands at both distance and near. So when they have less critical visual demands, then they are also easy to fit. For example, a patient with a hyperopia of about +2, an addition of 150, who is struggling not to wear spectacles all the time. Okay, that's a motivation. They don't like to wear spectacles. They want to wear they want something else. They want another option. Okay, such patients will be easy to fit. And most times, patients with a distant area, particularly hyperopes, they are very good candidates for contact lens fitting. For those of you that practice this, you see that it's usually easier multifocal contact lenses compared to those that are emmetropes at distance, and they are also presbyopes. Now, for the difficult to fit patients, one of them, of course, if the cylinder is above 150, then it means you have to use a multifocal toric lens, okay, for this patient. And of course, the fitting dynamics is definitely different from the regular spherical contact lenses, whether it's RGPs or soft. Okay, so you must take note of the toricity, you must take note of the cylinder, and just like we learned on Wednesday, you must be able to check for rotation, ensuring that it doesn't rotate beyond the acceptable degree that these manufacturers can produce. Okay, so that's one quality or one class that's very difficult to fit patients. Another one is when the astigmatism is against the rule. Now, for against the rule astigmatism, you already know that the steeper meridian is on the horizontal, so it's on the 180 degrees. Now, in fitting contact lenses, particularly, not even general contact lenses, okay, you want maybe a mild movement. Now, the movement should not be vertically. The movement rather should not be horizontal. The mild movement you're looking at is a vertical movement, up and down. More so for contact lenses, especially multifocal contact lenses. Sorry, can you still hear me? The network
we can hear you. We can hear you.
All right. Okay, thank you very much. The network is a bit unstable here. So for the against the rule astigmatism, I was saying that the steeper meridian, is on the 180. And for contact lenses, particularly for toric lenses, there is a tendency for the contact lens to move faster in the steeper meridian or towards the steeper meridian. What do I mean by that? Just imagine if you have a flat surface and you have a steep surface and you put a ball on the flat surface. Okay, now you notice that that ball will move more on the steep surface. Is that not so? So it is likely for the contact lens to move in the direction of the steeper meridian. Now imagine you have an against the rule astigmatism where the steeper meridian is on the 180. So it means your lenses will be moving, horizontally. And that's not what you want in fitting contact lenses. You want a vertical movement. And so that's why with the rule is usually easier to fit compared to against the rule. I don't know if that makes sense. So to move forward, for critical, another difficult to fit quality or characteristic is when there's critical or very fine visual demand both at distance and at near. So this patient wants very crisp vision at distance and at near. For example, a pilot wants to have very good distant vision as well as very good near vision because they operate both distance simultaneously. So they need to have these things very clear. They can't compromise distance for near. Okay, and this is one of the things that multifocal lenses does. You must compromise one for the other. But there's a way we can draw a thin line or try to find a common ground between the distance and near anyways. But they are actually among it's a quality of more difficult to fit patients. Imagine presbyopes, I said this earlier. Imagine presbyopes, those that don't have any error at distance and they're just emerging as presbyopes. So you're having plano at one. It's really difficult because that compromise will make their distant vision a bit blurry, and they are very concerned about such because without glasses, they see distance very clearly. Now you're introducing them to multifocal contact lenses where they will compromise distant vision. That may not be very well with them, may not go down well with them. So they would react. Another concern or another quality of a difficult to treat patient is when pupil size is greater than 4 mm. You can imagine that under natural illumination conditions. So under ambient illumination, pupil is greater than 4 mm. So if it's in dark illumination, how it will be? To reach 6 mm, and that's frustrating. Here you have to start looking for optical zone diameter that is over 6, 7 mm, and most companies don't produce that. The average usually see they're out there is about 6 mm. And so if you're having the patients that have pupil size of greater than 4 mm in natural condition, imagine what it will be in dim condition of illumination. When you have conditions like amblyopia or strabismus, it's quite difficult to treat. When the patients, when expectations to discard and never use spectacles again, even for special tasks or viewing conditions. So if the patient tells you that I don't want glasses at all, okay? I don't want glasses. I want to just throw away my glasses. You and I know that is not possible, okay? So once in a while, you still fall back on your glasses, on your spectacles, so you don't throw it away because there are times where you are contraindicated to wear contact lenses, especially in presence of inflammation or some form of infection. You must stay away from your contact lenses. But for those patients that tells you, no, I don't want to wear glasses again, they are difficult to treat. Highly satisfied mono wearers. So when the patient enjoys their monovision prescription, it's difficult to treat multifocal contact lenses for them. Tear film abnormalities or lid margin disease. It's also very difficult. Here you have to start considering a lot of things. Naturally, wearing contact lenses makes you at risk of having dry eye. So imagine you now having dry eye and some of that form of lid conditions like lid apposition or all of that is contraindicated, difficult to treat. Okay, this is plenty. All right. Molecular distant visual acuity poorer than 20/20 with spherical equivalent refractive correction. So here you're looking at patients that have monocular vision poorer than 20/20 because they don't in contact lens fitting, especially for multifocal contact lenses. We try as much as we can to ensure that distant vision remains 20/20. Okay, we don't want to go below that, particularly because especially if patient prefers, or does more distant activities compared to near. So we always prioritize that distant visual acuity remains 20/20. Sorry, I was monitoring this presentation with another device. It went out, so let me try to log in again. It helps me to know if we are still on track or not. Apologies. All right. And of course, when you have anisometropia, that's also another difficult to treat quality. Now, the second thing is you set realistic expectation for patients. You don't tell them that when I treat you with these glasses, all of your problems are solved. We must be very sincere. In as much as we have a good part of this technique, it has its limitations. So we must be very, very practical. We must set realistic goals and expectations for the patient. So you must be able to explain, especially the compromise that will come on there. The compromise is very sure. You must tell them that distant and near vision you must not get them the way you want. You must have to compromise a little. So you must explain that. Don't over-exaggerate. Also explain the progressive nature of presbyopia. So what they're going to be using now is different from what they're going to be using in next 1.5 years or 2 years. You need to also know that. You need to explain to them all you know about multifocal contact lenses. Though it satisfies 90% of your visual needs, there's still a 10% that you may not get. So, and also give them all the options and of course educate them, especially as it concerns the teens, because that's one of the areas that we are interested in. Considering patients, do a thorough case history. We've said that before. Motivation to wear contact lenses. We've said all of this before. Now, occupational needs. This is very, very important. I mentioned earlier that some occupation may need, we prioritize near vision. For example, fashion designers, they're always looking at the needles. They're always looking at, their major concern is near. All right. While for maybe footballers, their major concern is distance. So you must be able to know what their occupational or recreational needs are and also meet those needs. Find out the patient's experience about contact lenses. Some of them don't have good experiences. I have a patient. The patient is still with me. We tried her for contact lens before. She's a presbyopes. I was fitting her for multifocal, but she had not had an experience before. So I had to try her on single vision first. In fact, I taught her how to wear it. She did that. She removed it in front of me in the clinic. So she took it home. I told her, try it at home. So she took it home, put it in her eyes, to bring it out now, wahala. In fact, that night she disturbed me. We stayed awake till around 1 a.m., before. In fact, I told her to sleep with it. That's no problem. Next morning she comes to the clinic because she tried, her eyes were already teary red. So I told her to relax and come the next morning to take it out. Well, when I called her in the morning, she actually was able to take it out after we stopped talking. Well, she told me, no, never again will I put that in my eye. So a lot of people may have had bad experiences and they wouldn't want to. So you must understand that experience. Ask questions about daily life and activity. Very, very important. I don't need to stress this. External exam, you all know what to do here, so I'll just run through this. Refraction, very, very important. Here, we say we will avoid phoropter or autorefractor. Why? Because these will, phoropter, for example, may induce some form of accommodation. We call that proximal accommodation. I don't know how many of us have heard of that before. Okay, since the phoropter is in front of you, okay, you don't have the ability to look around. Just only where the holes are, you look through. So some things may be attracting, proximal accommodation that may affect the results. So I always advise that you stay away from autorefractometer when you are doing contact lens fitting, and also the four of them. Perform new refraction for far and near. So do your refraction over again. Push plus lenses for patients' distance prescription. We said earlier that there's a notion in optometry or in eye care that the higher most plus least minus, but that should be on the basis. What's the basis for that statement? Because sometimes it's contraindicated. But that's for those of us that are into binocular vision. There are times where you don't give, full prescription when it is plus. You must be partial. So there must be a basis for you saying that. But here, pushing plus on the patient distance prescription helps to, because your ad is a plus already. And I said earlier that it's more difficult to fit a plano ad patient than a hyparo ad patient. Okay, so it's only advised to just give some ad or give some plus rather. That will give the patient best view. Okay, but don't compromise the vision to a point where it's less than 20/20. You mustn't push plus to that extent. Correct for better distance vision. This is very important for basic contact lens. And don't forget the formula you use. Your contact lens is equal to your spectacle over 1 minus distance spectacle prescription. Okay, and the spectacle prescription there, the distance there is the vertex distance, change in vertex distance, change from what you use in the refraction room and what the frame the patient is wearing. Very, very important because it affects the power of contact lenses the patient will have. And also take note that the more you move out, or if you are moving out, it's a negative. If you are moving in, it's positive. Take note of that. Then, of course, give the best there for distant vision. That is, if the toricity or the cylinder is less than 1. If it's more than that, you must give multifocal toric contact lenses. Now, this is very important, and we must take note of this. For multifocal contact lens fitting, one of the major guidelines is to know the dominant eye. is to know the dominant eye. So you must ensure that the dominant eye is found to the left, to the right. Now, this helps us. I'll mention this much later. It's very, very important for multifocal contact lens vision. Now, how do you check for dominance in the vision or in the eye? We have various methods, but one of the commonest is a 1+1 blur test. So here, what you do is patient is looking at a distance, usually the 20/20 line, okay, and you put in your plus lenses in each of the eye. Now, the eye that recognizes the blur most is the dominant eye. Simple as that. You can also do like the way this patient or this photo is in front of you. You know, you can do that and bring the look at the distance, look at an object on your chart and bring it close to your eyes until it enters one eye. The eye it enters is the dominant eye without thinking. You do that without thinking anyway, so that you don't deliberately put it on one of the eyes. So the eye that it falls over is the dominant eye. Okay, of course, you must do keratometry and all of that to know the radius of curvature. Just like the presenter mentioned yesterday, radius of curvature talks about the cornea. Okay, so radius of curvature, cornea, it can also be converted to radius of curvature. Okay, that depends on how, just like he said, for the steeper meridians have higher curvature in terms of curved nature and shorter radius of curvature. We all know that the relationship is inversely related. And you must, of course, then you can determine the base curve using the curvature that you got from the keratometry. Now, base curve, contact lens related, while radius of curvature or curvature is cornea related. You can also do your corneal topography if you have that equipment. Trial lens selection and evaluation. Now here, we assume that you've gotten the power, you assume that you've checked for base curve. Now you must see if this, whatever lens you've selected, whatever curvature you've selected, you saw that I did not focus on all of those things we talked about yesterday on Wednesday. So you have the power now, you have the curvature, you have the dominant eye, you have the add power. Okay, now you have a trial lens, of course, and you want to see how this lens behaves in the eye. Just like we always know. Okay, I usually in my class, when I'm talking about contact lens, I have an acronym I usually tell my mentees. We call it Morocco VA. Morocco VA, just the way you spell Morocco, then add VA at the end. These are the things you use to check for your contact lens or check the proper fit and optimized fit for contact lens. So MO there talks about movement, RO talks about rotation. The first C, I think Morocco has double C's and also. So the first C talks about centration. Then the next CO talks about comfort. So that's Morocco, right? Then VA, of course, the VA is also one of the things you use to check for optimum fit. So you've done that based on the initial refraction you've gotten, based on the initial contact lens you've gotten, you put that in the eye, then you allow the lens to settle as usual for about 10 to 15 minutes. And you observe all of those things again to know the optimum fit. For IOGPs, you know what to do. Okay, for soft lenses, you know what to do. I assume that we do know what to do. But I have a question later for us, maybe at the end of this presentation. I have 15 minutes, so I need to run. So you evaluate the trial lenses and see which of them is best for the patient. Now, after that, you must ensure you check for VA, just like I mentioned. VA is usually the last evaluation you do. Now, for multifocal contact lenses, just like I said, you check for both distance and near VA. Okay. First, you measure it binocularly because that's the way the patient functions. The patient does not function monocularly, so you must assess it functionally during binocular vision. So how is the patient's vision at distance, binocularly? How is the patient's vision at near, binocularly? I will stress more on it later, on how to get some of these things. Now, if the patient is good, if the vision is good, then you don't need to do any form of enhancement. However, if vision either at near or distance is not optimum, is not didn't meet the patient's expectation, then you have to do some form of enhancement. I will explain that later with examples. So what you do in terms of enhancement, you just add 025 or 050, 025 plus or minus for distance, if distance is the concern, or near, if near is the concern. We'll explain that as we move on. Then after that, if there's no issue, there's no concern, you usually ask the patient to return after a week for follow-up. You assess all of these things again to be sure that this patient is comfortable. Contact lenses, especially for multifocal contact lenses, we don't just dismiss the patient immediately. In fact, if the patient comes, most times they spend, you have to wait. I mean, they have to wait, for say maybe 1 hour or more, for you to be sure that whatever you're doing is correct. We have mentioned all of this before. So let me just move over this. Now, in multifocal contact lenses, as our focus is tonight, we have known that it could be RGP or soft lenses, that was silicone hydrogel lenses. Now, they come in two forms. We have the alternate or the alternating multifocal contact lenses, also known as the translating bifocals, as we'll see later, or the simultaneous multifocal contact lenses. So for the alternating, they could be solid or fused, just like you see in your regular bifocals. So what you have here is alternating contact lens. So it alternates from distance to near. So you have it segmented. You have the distant area and you have the near area. Okay, this is common for commonly seen in RGPs. That does not mean you don't see them in hydrogel lenses, but it's very scarce. These were the older. This was what was it's an older version or an older technology compared to soft multifocal contact lenses. So you find it more in RGP. So that's for that. Then for multifocal, these are some other forms. Triangular, you have the executive, just like you see in your executive bifocals spectacles. You have your trifocals, you have your crescents. Now, for the simultaneous, this is where you have it's much more recent compared to the alternating multifocal lenses. So you have them more in soft hydrogel or your silicone hydrogel lenses. Here, you have them into different zones. You have the aspheric, you have the zonal aspheric, and you have the multi-zone. The most common is the aspheric. We have the center near and the center distance. Now, this is where the trick comes, and I want you to try and pay some attention going forward from here. What I've been doing before is just to give you a background. So this is the cocoa, as we commonly say in our local palace. This is where the matter really is we need to pay more attention to. So for simultaneous contact lenses, like I said, they are more recent. They have both distant and near prescription within that 6 mm optical zone of the contact lens. Remember, we have the optical zone that carries the power. Then we have the limbal zone. Then we have the skirt or the outside zone. That place is non-optical. Anything can be there. So what they do is that they pay attention to the 6 mm, optical zone where the power is. So for this kind of contact lenses, you have both the distant portion and the near portion there. So what happens here is you give the brain the option to choose. So if I am looking at a near object, now my brain will condition my eye to look through the near part of that contact lens to make the picture. In fact, the one that is clearer, you and I know that the one that is clearer is what the brain will take. So if the areas that are clear when I'm reading, those are the areas the brain will concentrate on, and that eye will be functional, at that distance. This is the idea behind multifocal contact lenses or bifocal multifocal, to be precise, because especially for simultaneous part, which is most commonly prescribed today. So you have various powers across the lens, and you tell the eye or you tell the brain to choose which one will be much clearer for the patient. It also comes in RGP, but it's more common in your soft lenses. So you can see from this photo in front of you here. So So from this first one, using my cursor, you can see this is the optical zone. And when it was magnified, you see that this is the near one. This is a center near multifocal contact lens. Center near. So the near power or the add power is usually at the center. Then you have the intermediate around it. And of course, you have the distant portion here. So all of this is projected on the retina at the same time, and the brain chooses. Remember, we said over and over again that it is the brain that sees, not the eye. And this, it makes a lot of sense to me each time I hear things like this. It's the brain that actually chooses what to see. And when you actually wear these things, you would understand what those statements are, and they are very, very true. Okay, so this is a simultaneous contact lens. It has two forms. It comes in two forms rather. It could be center near or center distance. So for the center distance, I've said that the distant portion is on the center of the lens, surrounded by the intermediate and of course by the near prescription. And conversely, for the center near, the near prescription is at the center, the intermediate, and of course the distant portion is at the outskirts. I've explained all of this before. Yes, very, very, very important. I said earlier that pupil size, very, very, very key. You cannot fit multifocal contact lens correctly for a patient if you don't understand the pupil size or how the pupil changes from dim illumination to normal illumination, and also to bright illumination. You must have that. Okay, so for center near or center distance, you must take note of the pupil size. Very, very, very important. So large pupils, like I said earlier, greater than 4 mm, usually very difficult. That doesn't mean that you can't fix them. There's nothing that you cannot do. We only say that it may give you some form of difficulty to fit, but it's still possible. You have a way around it. So you must take note of that. So you have your center near. I've explained all of this before. Center distance. So, and also I mentioned earlier that the patient's vocation or the patient's job is also key. If a patient wants or a patient does more near work, then you as the practitioner should prioritize correcting the patient for near. So the dominant eye should have the center near prescription. While if the patient requires distant vision, so it means that the dominant eye should have a center distant prescription. We look at that as we move on with some examples. And also take note that we have a lot of brands out there, and this is very, very key. You must understand the fitting guidelines of the company you're using. For ProClear, for example, Cooper Vision, you must know the guidelines for their lens. Or the one thing I've come to understand is that they have similar guidelines as far as multifocal contact lens is concerned. However, they have some uniqueness that you must follow. All right. So for the sake of this presentation, I have to leave a disclaimer. I am not marketing ProClear. I am not. There's no financial commitment there. They didn't promise me that they didn't promise me any money. I'm just using it based on this presentation. So we're going to be focusing on ProClear as Cooper Vision company. They make ProClear. We're going to use them as a case study this evening before we close. So just like I mentioned earlier, this is a distant lens, and a distant lens usually have the center distance. So the center of that lens usually carries the distant power, okay? While the near would be at the outskirts, not necessarily outskirts, but within the 6 mm zone, but it should be moved outward. So you see that every lens, whether it's on the right eye or on the left eye, will have correction for both distant and near. This is seen in simultaneous contact lens, simultaneous multifocal contact lens. So that's why I told you that somehow there must be some compromise. Okay, so vision will not be as crisp as it should be, However, you as a practitioner must be able to find that very, very, draw them together to get the best line fit, according to statisticians. Okay. So this is for the right dominant eye and the non-dominant eye. Let's look at an example. So this is the guideline for Cooper vision, precisely. So what they tell you, what they ask you to do is determine the patient's spectacle prescription, both at distance, and of course, the ad for that patient. And just like we said before, if the cylinder is between 050 and 075, then you can do your spherical equivalent. But if it is above that, make sure you order for a multifocal toric contact lenses. Then you now consider all of those rotation and all of that and stabilization. And of course, determine the dominant eye. Very, very, very important. And select your ad power. Now, the ad power can be a form of low ads, mid ads, and high ads. So the low ads usually from 075 to 125. Now, this is a bit different for other companies. Okay? This is for Preconference. So low ads usually from 075 to 125. For medium ads from 150 to 175, and of course high ads from 2 to 250. Anything higher than that is also high ads. Okay. So sometimes you will see them not writing the ad on the contact lens. They'll just tell you low ad, high ad, mid ad. You should be able to know the ad power it's amount into. So they said you place the distant lens on the dominant eye and place the near lens on the non-dominant eye. This is if this patient's regular job or daily activities require distance vision all the time. That's when you do this. Conversely will be the case if the patient's vision or the patient's demand is more at near. Okay, I hope that is clear. Then of course you allow for stabilization. Of course you compensate for that distance and all of that. Measure visual acuity, we said, for binocularly. Please binocularly at first. If the patient is okay when you do binocular vision, both at near, patient reads 6 at distance, and of course read 6 at near. Perfect. Then you don't need, your job is done. But if the patient is telling you, I can't read, or the patient is having poor vision at distance and very good vision at near. So let's say, for example, 6/12 at distance, and of course 6/6 at near. You have to reevaluate. Or if the patient is having very good vision at distance and poor vision at near, you have to reevaluate. So maybe they're reading 6/12 at near. You have to reevaluate. You must find a way. In fact, the minimum, according to Proclear, and I think most companies follow that rule, you shouldn't go below 20/40. 20/40 would be the same as 6/12, for example. You shouldn't compromise below that. So if you're having anything below 20/40 or 6/12, you have to reevaluate. Anything below that, you have to reevaluate. And you must measure it under normal light conditions, as well as the ambient illumination or poor illumination, dim illumination, just to be sure how these patients will feel. So if vision acuity if the expectation is there, then you are good to go. However, if the expectations were not met, you need to do more tests. That's why I said you need to reevaluate. Here now, you don't do monocular vision binocular vision anymore in terms of visual acuity check. You move from binocular to monocular verification. So here, and take note that because vision is poor at near, does not mean that the eye that have the center near prescription is a problem. I'm sure by now you understand that, because binocularly both eyes are seen. If vision is poor at near, does not necessarily mean that it is the eye with the near vision or the near lens that has a problem. It could be the right eye. Okay. I'll give an example as we move forward so you understand the dynamics. So these are the visual expectations as seen in this. Now, binocularly, both distance and near should be 20/20, just like this written here. Distant vision is 20/20. near vision is 20/20. For the distant lens, at distance you have 20/20. Then the minimum you should go at near is 20/40. That's your 6/12 or better. While your near lens should be 20/40 at distance or better, and for distant, for near, it should be 20/20. So this is expectation. If it goes against this, then you need re-evaluation. For an example, this is the patient spectacle prescription. So first we must, this cylinder is, in as much as sometimes some patients, you are not able to get them to be standard vision, that's vision 20/20 with the spherical equivalent. So if you can go ahead to order your toric lens, with 0.75 cylinder, it's fine. You help the patient more rather than doing spherical equivalent. But usually you can also do spherical equivalent to help. So for spherical equivalent, you know what to do, half this and add to this. Okay, why for this one, it's not really a big deal. And the add prescription here for both eyes is 150. So the suggested binocular, suggested multifocal lens for this patient would be -325 with a medium add, or an add of +150 for the distant eye, for the eye that is for distance, dominant eye in this case. While the left eye, we still have -3, add 150 to the near lens. So what it means here is that for the distance, for the right eye, this is the center distance. For the left eye, this is the center near. Because this is the eye that will help you. The left eye is what will help the patient to read. The right eye is what will help the patient at distance. Very, very important to know. So monocular verification, like I said earlier, is only needed when there's a problem to fix, when it's an existing visual acuity, poor visual acuity. If there is none, then you can go ahead to order that lens. So I've already explained this, that there's a common misconception. Because the problem is at distance doesn't mean that it's a distant lens that have a problem. No, it doesn't mean that like that. Remember that both of them have the same add power, so you must find out exactly. So this example will give us a clearer picture. Okay, so this first example, we're looking at spheres, spherical lenses. So the final prescription for this patient is -2 for right eye, at 150, and -2 for left eye at 150. So you have distant lens and near lens. So distance, center distance and center near for right and left eye. So assuming that the patient's right eye is the dominant eye in this case. So binocular vision, when you tested visual acuity binocularly, you have distant vision to be 20/20, and you have near vision to be 20/60. 20/60 is poorer than 20/40. So this patient will not be comfortable at near. So they will tell you that I'm not really enjoying my near vision. Okay. So what do you do at this point? Do you just look at the near lens and say, the near lens in the left eye is not correct? No, that's not what you do. Just like we said, do your monocular verification, check each eye. So for the right eye, distance is good. But as distant vision is good for the right eye. But the left eye is telling you 20/60. But for the near lens eye, that's the left eye, you are having everything in order. Distance is 20/40, near is 20/20. So it means that the problem is not with the near lens. The problem is with the distant lens. Because monocularly, the right eye is giving 20/60 at near. And so what's the solution? All you need to do is to add more, give this patient more add in that right eye. So you are raising this prescription from add 150 on the right eye to add 2. Doing that, you have solved that patient's problem. So add 2 on the right eye will bring the vision at near to 20/40. And the patient is good to go. So binocularly now, this patient will have 20/20 vision at distance and 20/40 vision at near, which is the acceptable range. In the other example here, you find out that 20 is just the same, but this time around, distant vision is what was the concern for the patient when they did, when binocular vision was done. binocular visual acuity. I hope you understand what I mean by that, not binocular vision like you know. Binocular visual acuity was done, and vision at distance was poorer, was less than 20/40. So it was not acceptable for this patient. So what they did was that they did monocular verification and found out that it was the near lens at distance that had 20/60. And so what they did was to reduce, was to add, of course, you have to now do some form of refining to the distant portion of that lens. And they ended up adding 050 to that lens, and it brought that lens to -250 for the distance. The ad was the same. So this is what brought the patient to 20 vision, at least 20/40 vision for both distances. I've been talking for over 30 minutes. I have how many minutes left? Wow, I have 3 minutes left, so I need to wrap up now. I hope we're still hearing me, please. And we are following.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Lastly, this is the last one. I just put this up to differentiate toric and spherical lenses, whether it's RGPs now or soft lenses. That one, now I'm not concerned also again. We already talked about them before. But you can do this for any of them, all right? But what I believe from my experience, more of soft lenses, you have more of this simultaneous bifocal, simultaneous multifocal lenses in a silicone hydrogel form. So just like we said earlier for the example one, this is a toric lens now. Here, they had to do, they did not do spherical equivalent because for left eye, the cylinder is above 1. Okay, so they did a multifocal toric lens here. Now, the same thing, if you look here, when they did binocular vision, visual acuity check, the near vision was a problem. Okay, the near vision was a problem. Now, they did monocular verification and found out that it was a distant lens here that had near vision to be 20/60. And they did that manipulation and got the lens final prescription to be for the right eye. They increased the ad from 150 to 2. And this brought the patient to the expected visual acuity binocular. Same here, the same thing they did, but this time the problem was at distance. And of course, they altered the distance prescription for that particular eye, which in this case was the near lens, left eye. And they ended up increasing the distance prescription for the left eye to be 325 in the instead of 2.75, and that gave the patient optimal prescription. Okay, so these are all other forms of multifocal options. I just mentioned that of Cooper Vision, which is ProClear. If you're familiar with all of these, they have similar fitting guidelines. However, something unique, just add 1 or 2 uniqueness just to be different from others. Clinical tips as to round up: prescribe maximum plus power for distant vision. Say that early. Choose the lower ad possible. Choose the lower ad power when possible. Not necessary to overprescribe the ad power. You don't need to overprescribe ad power. Test patients near functional vision with their mobile phone. So just like I said, you don't only need to do the standard visual acuity test, the Snelling's chart. That's standard. Please do functional. Let the patient check their phone. In fact, move around. That's what I do. They move out of the clinic, check, the trees, see everything, how it is. That's functional view. Very, very, very important. And of course, check when the room lights are on and when they are off, so that you are sure what the patient is going to face outside the clinic. Carefully select patients. Some of these things we said before. I just wanted us to not to forget it. That's why I had to put it at the tail end of this presentation. So adhere to manufacturer's guidelines. Of course, I said use trial lenses instead of phoropters. Do not occlude eye during assessment, particularly when you're doing binocular visual tests. The only time you do that is when you did not achieve patient's visual acuity expectation. Then you can do your monocular verification. Then use 0.25 for steps in altering your lenses. Take care when you add minus power for distant vision that near vision is not affected. Always use the lowest ad, said that before. When one method fails, we try another method. So usually multifocal lenses, from my experience, because I've done monovision, I have done, of course, we all have done spectacle over spectacles, which is very basic. I've done monovision, I've done multifocals fitting, and I think multifocals is much more accepted by patients. For monocular vision, they have therapies involved, is affected and all of that. So they prefer your multifocal contact lenses, in my opinion. And I think statistics also backs that up. It's also, of course, to explain patients, explain the period of adaptation to patients, and don't be in haste to dispense your glasses or your spectacle, your contact lenses. Please don't be in haste. Take your time. In conclusion, the assessment of visual acuity using the chart alone is a poor indicator of its success in presbyopic contact lenses. I've said that already. Please use functional visual acuity. Let the patient go around and check off the light, turn it back on, see how the patient feels in real life. Very, very important. It's essential to also be realistic with patients. Don't tell them things that is above what you can give. And also ensure that the patient understands the aim of the visual needs. Can meet 80 to 90%, not 100%. We can't meet 100% of their needs. Also know that no lens offers the ultimate correction for presbyopic eye. The most important thing is that you should take note of quality design. Don't forget, don't only look at quality design rather. Okay, it's not about quality here, it's about comfort, it's about feedback of patients. Okay, so don't say, here, this one, supervision is the aim thing. No. If another brand is what makes patient feels good, because sometimes the patient may tell you, I've had that here several, the patient will tell you of the exact brand they want. So it means that we must have, don't just be comfortable fitting one particular type of lens, have ideas of other brands, and you'll also be able to meet with them. So thank you very much. Contact lenses are not underwear, don't overwear them. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Dr. Osazee. Thank you for your presentation. We sincerely appreciate coming from Wednesday program, Wednesday presentation, the background we had, and then this solidifies a lot of other things we want to know about. That's Morocco, please. You're going to drop it on the platform so that we follow you to do Morocco stuff. I beg. So I don't know if there are any questions on the platform. I said, if you have any question, you drop it for Dr. Osazee. He's going to take care of it while we get into scleral contact lenses immediately. So Dr. Osazee, please, I have sent in the model that you just took. We will painstakingly go through it. Dr. Adi, we'll painstakingly go through it. And then if we have questions, we'll drop on the platform so that when you get back, you'll be able to answer them, please. I hope that's okay by you.
Absolutely, my chairman. Thank you so
All
much.
right. All right. So everyone, we welcome our next resource person, Dr. Orwell, who happens also to be our national coordinator. He's going to take the floor on scleral contact lenses. Some of us will be going through this model for the first time, while there are some of us also that would be hearing it either for the second, third, or fourth time. So whichever one it is, let's open our hearts. And this is something we have to present at the pre-conference, and we need to get our onions straight. So you have the floor, my NC, sir, for scleral contact lens. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Chigi, and a huge well done to Dr. Osazee for the wonderful presentation.
Yeah.
And I think he has given further background to the presentation.
Scleral.
Yeah, so I think we're building on the presentations. And again, I need to thank Dr. Hadi for laying a strong foundation for the presentation. So I don't know if
Dr. Sars, can you stop sharing so that Dr. Orwell can?
Thank you. So I might encounter interruptions because I'm yet to fix my laptop. So I'll be projecting with my laptop and then be speaking from my phone. So calls might interrupt that. I hope not to receive as many calls as possible in the course of this presentation. That might help a whole lot. Just a moment to share my slide. Confirm you can see my slide.
Absolutely, sir.
Thank you. Okay, my name is Orwell.
You have to put it in slideshow. Yeah, that's fine. That's okay.
Thank you. My name is Orwell Majokolam, and I'll be presenting on scleral contact lenses as part of the modules we'll be presenting during our conference. I'll start by asking us if any of us have fitted scleral contact lenses. If you've done the fitting in your practice before, can you let us know? Anyone? You can use the chat box, the chat option if you want. Or you can speak if you want.
Okay, I have fitted, but I have not showed for a patient. I remember working with Dr. Neka. Then we fitted a couple, but since I started, I have not fitted a scleral lens for a patient.
Fantastic. Thank you. What was your experience, Dr. Osazee, in fitting the scleral contact lenses?
Well, at first, it was my major challenge basically was the size of that lens, because you're looking at lens of about 18 mm, 20 mm, 18 to 24 mm. You know, it's really a challenge. But at the end of the day, because two things, I fitted it it was fitted on me, and I also fitted on someone. So I had the experience of how patient feels with the contact lens on and how to fit it. So it's interesting if you have all the materials with you and you're properly guided, as I was then. So that's it. But at the end of it, it made a lot of sense. It made a full lot of sense.
Interesting. Thank you, Dr. Osazee. By the way, I enjoyed the Morocco VA.
Thank you,
VA. Well, those acronyms helped us those days in school to help, internalize some concepts. So that's
yes,
helpful. Okay, apart from Dr. Osazee, has anyone else been able to fit scleral contact lenses, either yourself or fit a patient? Anyone else? No, nothing to be worried about it, nothing to be concerned. It's possible not to. Okay, Dr. Hardy said, I have, but in my dream. Okay, right. So, and if you have not, what do you think is the challenge? What is the experience? What is the challenge? Why have you not been able to fit scleral contact lens? Is it a case of not having any need for it, or not having access to it, or just not possible to fit it? Dr. Cynthia said, remover not fitting. Okay, accessibility and cost. Fantastic. So it's interesting to have this intro to understand what we need to do about scleral contact lenses, because this is a specialty contact lenses. In fact, I think in Nigeria, it's only 2 persons I am sure of that practice scleral contact lenses, Dr. Obiwanne and Dr. Sam Sedi. I'm not sure if any other clinic really practices scleral contact lenses optimally. But that said, we see why do we have the challenge or why do we have the issue with the scleral contact lenses in Nigeria? What are the issues with that? And is there anything we can do as a family or as an organization to break it down, to bring it to Nigeria? Do we have access to it? How affordable is it? Can we access them in Nigeria? And why is it difficult for us to fit scleral contact lenses?
Are you asking a question, sir?
No. I've gone past asking questions. So, as a way of outline, is anyone asking a question? Otherwise, then I'll move on. No. So someone said availability and not having need and is expensive. So availability and cost. So as way of outline, we'll be covering what scleral lenses, contact lenses are, what are the different designs we have, what are the indications of who is suitable, who is scleral contact lenses suitable for, are there contraindications in fitting scleral contact lenses, what are the guidelines of fitting procedures? And should I say, I might be jumping a few things that Dr. Osazee has done justice to already. And I think Dr. Hardy also did a huge task of laying the foundation for some of those things so that we don't waste so much time. And how do we evaluate or assess fitting for optimal vision and comfort? And what is required to start the practice if we want as eye care practitioners in Nigeria? At least as FOM, we should lead the way for it. So over the years, RGP has been the main contact lens in practice for people who have cornea ectasia, people who have something like keratoconus, keratoglobus. That has been the practice contact lens of choice in such conditions. However, because these RGPs sit on the cornea, yes, you have the crisp vision or the sharp vision from the RGP contact lenses, but comfort is compromised because the lenses sit on the cornea. So there are other indications, there are other cases where patients have RGPs on their eyes, but they keep falling off, they keep dropping off. And in such cases, the patients cannot wear them for a long time because they keep falling off. So now the thinking is that something that can cover the whole of the cornea properly, that won't fall off easily, that will give optimal comfort, at the same time will be suitable and also stable in the eyes. So that gave rise to scleral contact lenses. Now, the several capacities such as masking of, and again in cases where, because sometimes in the cases where the contact lenses, RGPs in this case now, drip in the eyes, you have sometimes corneal scarring, corneal irregularities, and other things in the cornea that may not permit the contact lenses, the RGPs to sit in. So the several capacities, such as masking of corneal irregularities by providing a good fluid interface between posterior surface of the lens and the cornea plane, high permeability, therapeutic protection of the cornea, excellent vision and comfort, have further expanded the clinical significance of scleral contact lenses. Today, the scleral lens is fast becoming popular due to its inherent ability to maximize comfort and profile solution to contact lens fitting of advanced keratoectasia, pathological dry eye, corneal transplant, and graft versus host diseases. So now, what are these scleral contact lenses? If you look at this picture, the first one is very small in comparison to the other lenses you can see. So the first one is RGP. Why is it small? It's small because it takes the shape of the cornea. It sits exactly on the cornea, so it has to be small. It has to fit on the cornea only. Now, if you look at that, because of the discomfort from the RGP, there was a need to manufacture or produce another contact lens that can, one, give that comfort which the RGP didn't give by having a skirt around the edge of the RGP or the edge of a hard contact lens, because that was the challenge initially, right? So the skirts at the edge, which is a soft contact, and the RGP at the center gave rise to the hybrid contact lenses. So both vision is optimized, vision and comfort are achieved. However, that wasn't enough. So you have need for contact lenses that can cover the entire cornea plane without sitting on the cornea. So that gave rise to scleral contact lenses. So scleral contact lenses are contact lenses of larger diameter, that Dr. Osazee just rightly mentioned, large diameter lenses. So the word scleral means where does it sit on? Where does it stay? They are lenses that stay on the sclera. So they vault over the cornea, they arch over the cornea, and do not stay on the cornea, do not sit on the cornea. So because they vote the entire cornea and act, because they vote the entire cornea, there's a space then between the cornea and the lens itself. And that space is filled with something, with normal, with a preservative-free saline. So you have another interface. So you have the lens, you have an interface with fluid, and you have the cornea on top of it. So the rest on the sclera of the eye with minimal pressure. And because it's the rest on the sclera, the pressure is reduced, or there's little or no pressure on the eye. So because of that, they are good for correcting vision problems caused by corneal irregularities. And because they consider the fluid like pouring oil. I remember those days back home, we used to pour water on floor. On floor, if you pour the water on the floor, you can almost swim on the floor. So that's what happens when you have the tear or the saline or the solution on top of the cornea and the scleral contact lenses on it. So the fluid masks the irregularity on the cornea. So that provides also some therapeutic protection to the underlying ocular surface. And the size, the diameter of scleral contact lenses range from almost 14 diopter to as high as 24 diopters. Now look at this picture. If you look at this picture, you see that you have the cornea here. If you see the cursor, if you have the cornea here, you have the liquid reservoir or liquid interface or space where liquid is filled up. And you have the scleral lens and you don't have the sclera. So in fitting the scleral contact lens, as we'll see in the course of this presentation, you have a fluid that is put in the space or put inside the scleral lens before putting it in the eye, before inserting the contact lens in the eye. So that gives you the fluid reservoir, the cornea, and then the lens itself. So have a look at this. So if you look closely at this, this is where the scleral contact lens is sitting, far from the limbus. This is, I'm sure you can see it here. And if you see the second picture on the right, you see where the scleral contact lens is fitting or is sitting. And the word sclera means it is on the sclera. That's as simple as that. Now, a quick difference between the RGP and the scleral contact lens, so we can move on. A quick difference or comparison between the two. I've mentioned this, the size, that's something easily you can recognize. And then both of them are gas permeable. They are rigid gas permeable. Both RGP and SEL. Now, the key difference is in the diameter of the two. So while the RGP is a small diameter contact lens that sits on the cornea, the scleral contact lens is a large diameter contact lens, and it vaults on the cornea. So it doesn't sit on the cornea, it arches on the cornea. Because of that, because it's stuck in the sclera, there is almost no movement in the case of the scleral contact lens, as opposed to what you have in the RGP, where you have limited movement. And in terms of lens awareness, there is almost no awareness of lens wear in the case of the scleral contact lens. Why has it become popular? Let's have a look at that. Now, because of the features I've mentioned already about RGP, about the scleral contact lens, and the fact that the scleral contact lens will have to vault over the cornea, now the DK value, which we know as the oxygen permeability value, will likely be compromised, because the distance between the cornea and the external environment is now far because of that interface of the liquid interface. So now manufacturers of this scleral contact lens started thinking of how to make it improve on the qualities and manufacture different customized versions of the contact lens. So that's why you have different manufacturers produce it in different DK value, and you can have it in values in qualities that will reflect different shapes of the cornea. So for those that have regular curves, those that have steep keratoconus curves, for those that have reverse geometry, remember the cornea is prolate. So you have the cornea steeper at the center and flattens towards the periphery. Now, because the contact lens, this is a specialized contact lens, it is not something you get over the shelf. So the manufacturers can manufacture different contact lenses to suit different conditions of the eye, to suit different needs of the eyes, which we shall see in the course of this presentation. So it can fit, you have both the toric and different versions or different designs. So they can fit corneas that could not be fit before with a regular or conventional RGP. And it can be used to postpone or prevent surgical procedure. We shall see also that. And the good thing also about that, which makes it very helpful in managing cases that result in ocular surface disease or corneal dryness or anything that will expose the cornea, it is ideal for it. Of course, we'll say that in the indications, and I won't bore you with this slide now. We'll go. Please confirm you can still hear me.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. And if I'm getting it right, just say, please go ahead.
Go ahead, sir.
Thank you very much. Okay, just a quick lens classification of the scleral lens. The one thing we have to emphasize is that you have this scleral contact lens is a specialized form of contact lens that you can't buy or pick over the shelf. So we have different designs to achieve different purposes or reasons. So some sit almost on the cornea, some sit on the limbus or the corneoscleral interface, which is the corneoscleral part. Some also sit far away from the limbus. So these are the different designs. And when they sit on the cornea, you have the diameter as something around 12.5. And the interface, that's the tear film now, or the tear layer, is low. When you have, and the contact lens will almost touch the cornea. And when you have it in the limbus, this is what you have as a diameter. And the higher, of course, the tear film, the tear reservoir will also increase. And when you have it away from the limbus on the sclera, you have this diameter. And again, this is the focus, and this is where most manufacturers get their scleral contact lenses. So this is exactly what you have. In most scleral contact lenses, the diameter is between 15 to 24. So for those who have, based on the need of based on what you want to achieve and the condition you want to manage. For instance, if you have a patient who has keratoconus and the eye is already bulging, you may have to increase the diameter and all of that. So you have the sizes ranging from mini sclera to large or full sclera. And in the mini sclera, of course, the tear film I've mentioned that is low. And in the large or full sclera, you have large tear reservoir. So that's something to be aware of in this slide. And again, if you want to treat, for instance, if you want to treat a patient who has severe case of keratoconus, you have to consider something bigger in terms of the size of the diameter you want to use. Same thing applies to other conditions that lead to ectasia, like PMD, which is pellucid marginal degeneration, and other conditions, or extreme cases of dry eye. So I think I've explained this so that we don't waste more time. So I think, right. So in terms of fitting, this is a very interesting part of it. In terms of fitting, the smaller the diameter, the easier the fitting. I remember what Dr. Osazee mentioned when he was responding to the initial question I asked, the interaction we had before. One challenge people have with fitting the scleral contact lenses is because of the size. Remember, in the RGP, it's just a small contact lens that you touch, you can hold with one finger and put on the cornea. In the case of the scleral contact lens, the size makes it a bit more difficult to fit. And then think about it, the larger the size, the more difficult it is to fit it. So mini scleral contact lens is easier to fit, and they have the advantage of oxygen permeability. Because they are closer to the cornea, it is easier to have oxygen permeate into the cornea than the larger ones. So mini scleral contact lenses is easier to handle for patients and easier to remove, and there is minimal blurring of vision. What does that mean? You know, when you have the larger diameter of the scleral contact lens, you have more fluid. And because you have more fluid in the interface between the cornea and the lens itself, you have a lot of interaction going on. You can have debris and other things coming on, protein and other things developing, being produced that can interact with the fluid. So that can lead to blurring of vision. So the smaller the fluid, the better the reservoir. The better the clarity of the reservoir. So look at this. This is easy to explain here, I'm sure. If you see, this is the limbus, and this is where the contact lens is sitting. So distance is smaller. Look at this one now, the one on the right, the image on the right-hand side. This is the limbus. This is where the lens is sitting. So the distance is quite larger. So this is full scleral contact lens, and this is mini scleral contact lens. So that arrow shows you what I try to explain. I think I can leave. I can skip this slide. But what is important here is the difference in the diameter and the tear reservoir. What that means in terms of what is contained in each of the designs of the contact lens. I think I've done a bit. I've done justice to this a bit. But in terms of indications, typically, when a patient is using the RGP and keeps having the difficulty to cope with that, in terms of comfort and in terms of the lens dripping off, or the lens falling off, or the lens not being stable, it is important to also recommend the scleral contact lens. In conditions where the cornea integrity is compromised, it's also recommended to give the patient an option of having scleral contact lenses. So in most cases where you have cornea warpage, cornea irregularity, cornea distortion, your best bet is scleral contact lenses, especially where RGP fails. So For severe refractive error, and this is very, very useful in dry eye, extreme or severe case of dry eye. Why is it important? Why is it useful? Remember, if you're managing a case of dry eye, extreme dry eye case, usually some cases will require you to give the patients the tear drop or the lubricant as often as possible. Sometimes they will ask you to apply it 8 times up to 10 times or as often as you can, as required, as possible. Now, think about your busy life, your busy schedule in the office, and having to apply the eye drop or the lubricant as often as you want. That can be inconveniencing. So, scleral contact lens might be ideal to recommend for this patient because that will help lubricate the cornea and can last for a long time in the course of your. Just a moment, please. Give me a moment. Sorry, I needed to attend to something. Sorry. Okay. I'm sure you can still hear me, right?
Of course, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. So, in that case, I mentioned that in the case of that extreme case of dry eye, your best option or best bet might just be scleral contact lenses because it will help to lubricate and hydrate the eyes as long as the patient can stay for the day without having need to apply topical eye drop. Okay. So for indications, you can classify that into vision improvement, ocular surface protection, cosmesis, or for cosmetic reason, and for sport. Now for vision, it's not so much of vision anyway, in my own thinking based on research, because other contact lenses can give you the same vision or quality of vision that you can get from scleral contact lenses. However, when vision, you have to optimize vision and comfort. It's also good to go for scleral contact lenses. But the major benefit you can get from it is the ocular protection, ocular surface protection. And then the cosmesis, then sports. Let's have a quick look at them. Now, in eyes with significant scarring, severe irregularities of the cornea due to trauma, maybe after corneal bone or after cornea scarring due to maybe resolved infection that leaves the cornea scared, or post-refractive surgery, or even degenerative or primary scarring of cornea, or degenerative conditions that can leave the cornea thinner and bulging, is best to recommend the scleral contact lens. In aphakia, because the scleral contact lens provides another lens option for you to work on. So advanced case of pellucid macular degeneration, keratoconus, keratoglobus. Remember, you have a difference between both of them. In the case of keratoconus, it is localized and usually at the center, as opposed to what you have in the keratoglobus, where the entire cornea is thinned and tend to bulge. You have the corneal dystrophies, where the cornea begin to lose its tensile strength and begin to wear out. So now in cases of corneal diseases like keratitis, neurotrophic corneal diseases, where the cornea nerves are already damaged and the cornea is not getting its sensitivity. Remember, the cornea is about the most innervated or has the most nerve endings, the tissue that has about the most nerve endings in the body. So that cornea can tend to lose its sensitivity and maybe exposed to damage, exposed to injury, because you can't feel any sensitivity again in the cornea. So that can affect. In cases of high refractive error, exposure keratitis, maybe due to any ectropion that will expose the cornea, or lagophthalmos that will expose the cornea. In the case of Sjogren's syndrome, where you have dryness of the eye, the mouth, and even the vagina, so that can affect it. In the case of Stevens-Johnson syndrome, where you have membrane dryness, that can affect, you need cornea, you need the scleral contact lenses to protect or cover the cornea and still give the cornea it can also offer the healing process for the cornea. So corneal graft disease, where also you have to cover the cornea and protect the cornea as well. So I've mentioned most of these ones, and I don't think I have to bore you further with that. So anything that compromises the corneal integrity, that will expose the cornea to dryness or desiccation, will likely benefit from having scleral contact lenses on. So apart from ocular surface protection, healing of epithelial cells is a prime reason for using scleral contact lenses. Example is in persistent epithelial corneal defect. So in sports, or for cosmetic reasons now and sports. So in ptosis, of course, we're going to see one picture in front. For ptosis, you want to give that as for cosmetic appeal to improve, because it's resting on the sclera and giving the cornea a good appearance. So for sports, why do you think it'd be useful for sports? Because it is suitable, it is stable, it can give the quality of vision you want, and it can last for a long time. You can be comfortable for a long time. So people who do sports can wear it because it won't easily fall off like the RGP. Vigorous sports activities, again, of course, is useful because you can trust that the lenses won't fall off. So for sports in dusty environment, that is very, very useful because you can be sure that before the cornea would get affected, the person would have come back to maybe clean the lens at the end of the day. Painted lenses for cosmesis. So have a look at this. This is the ptosis, and this is the scleral contact lens on, and it's masking the eye, giving it a better appearance. So look at what you have here. This is pellucid marginal degeneration. You have the thinning inferiorly instead of the thinning in the case of the keratoconus, you have it almost at the center, but here you have it inferior to the center of the cornea. And that gives you, when you ask the patient to look down, look down, so it gives you this V shape of the cornea, V shape of the eye rather. So this is what we call the Monson sign in keratoconus. And this is what you have when you have the keratoglobus, that all aspects of the cornea is affected. That's impressive Monson's sign. And again, this is what you have in the post cornea surgeries of the RK, the LASIK, and the PRK. And the Sjogren's syndrome, where you have the dryness and the dry spots appearing here. Okay. I think I've mentioned this. I'll quickly move. Now, are there conditions where scleral contact lenses are contraindicated that you may not suggest that to a patient? So that's where, of course, you have to do thorough examination before you finally recommend this or prescribe this. Now, in the case of bleb, remember when you do the capsulotomy, that's the common glaucoma surgery, you leave a spot where drainage will go. So sometimes it can get inflamed. So that's what we call the bleb. And sometimes, because it's done around the cornea, around the sclera, the lens can compress the bleb and might cause infection. It might also cause cornea. It might also cause IOP issues for the patient. However, no study has linked. Of course, I've not seen a case of fitting the scleral contact lens in bleb, patient with bleb or eyes with bleb. But I've not seen no studies have shown or have linked increase in IOP to contact lens, scleral contact lens wear. I've not seen that. So the eye with glaucoma valve, same thing with glaucoma surgery. You have glaucoma valve for drainage. It's not recommended to fit scleral contact lenses. Eyes with irregular cornea, highly irregular cornea. Sclera, sorry, not cornea. The reason you have to be careful in fitting this on highly irregular sclera is because of the shape of the sclera, the lens will have to sit on the sclera. And because the lens will have to sit on the sclera, if the sclera is not even or is highly irregular, it will affect the stability of the lens on that. So that's why most times here in the UK, they will take picture of the sclera, take picture of the cornea and the sclera at the same time to see the shape and see the level of irregularity that the sclera will show. In cases of corneal edema, this is very important. In cases of corneal edema, it is not recommended to fit scleral contact lenses. The reason is simple. When you have the scleral contact lenses, there's tendency to have hypoxia because of poor oxygen permeability. Of course, we're going to see a bit of that in the course of this presentation. So that might affect corneal edema. And that is why it's always recommended to do specular microscopy every 6 months in the course of your scleral contact lens management for this patient to manage and see level of endothelial cells. Are they depreciating? Are they increasing? And to see, also check the corneal thickness from time to time to see. Cornea, the studies have shown that scleral contact lenses have the tendency to increase or to cause corneal edema. So that's why you have to keep an eye on this patient and be sure that everything is going on well in the course of your management. I think I'll quickly run through this. So there are different designs, these different parts of the scleral lens design. You have the cornea zone, which you call the optic zone. The optic zone is the parts covering the cornea. You have the limbal zone, which is the parts that covers the limbus. You have the scleral zone. And if you have a look at this is, let me remove this so you can have a better view. So this is the cornea zone. And the good thing about the scleral contact lenses, you have a huge optic zone that the eyes can play around with. So you have a huge optic zone that you can look around and have quality vision that you can't get in the conventional RGP. So this is the limbus. So that's the central. This is the mid-peripheral, which is the limbal zone. Of course, the landing zone is the scleral zone, which we also call the haptic zone of the scleral contact lens. So I've mentioned this optical zone, transition zone, the landing zone. Some have toric part of it, the diameter, and so the other thing to explain here is fenestration. The word fenestrate is hole, having holes. Because of the quality, because of the challenge of having corneal hypoxia in scleral contact lenses, some manufacturers include designs that will have tiny zones in them to improve tear circulation, improve oxygen permeation or permeability to the cornea. So that's something that you should be aware of in ordering any type of corneal scleral contact lens you want and when you need it. That can also form a question for discussion. So now I've explained that the optic zone is the central zone with optical system, contains the base curve and the power of the eye, controls the sagittal height. I will explain the sagittal height later on, or sagittal depth. Then the front surface optics may be spherical or aspheric. And then you have the transition zone as the limbal zone or the mid-peripheral zone or the intermediate zone, all are the same term for the same limbal zone. And you have the landing zone, which is known as the scleral zone or the haptic zone, where the lens lands on the sclera. So we call it landing zone or the scleral zone or the haptic zone. So this also is another illustration of the zones. I don't need to bother you with this again. So that's again another picture to show the different zones. I think I've explained this large diameter, and I think that should be something to modify in this slide. So we don't bore our colleagues. Okay, now clearance is something important to be aware of in scleral contact lens fitting. The word clearance means how much space do you have? How much space do you have? So this is a major advantage of scleral contact lens. Because the RGP sits on the cornea, there's no clearance, there's no space at all. Now the scleral contact lenses vaults or arches over, so you have a clearance, you have a space between. So that space between is what we call clearance of the RGP. Remember, it doesn't also, for the regular ones, for the normal, conventional, mini, and large ones, it doesn't sit on the limbus. So it sits outside the limbus on the sclera. It should be about 3 to 4 millimeter away from the limbus, minimum of 3 to 4 millimeter away from 3 to 5 millimeter anyway from the limbus. So now the clearance also is determined by what you call the sagittal height. And sagittal height is the height between, I think I have a slide to explain that, so I can skip that for now, move on. So what to take out from this slide is that the minimum of 100 micron is desirable in the clearance. How is it determined? Why should I be aware of it? How can I control that? We'll see it in the course of this presentation. In the case of assessment of fit for the lens. So you have limbal clearance. The same thing applies. The limbal clearance has to do with how much space away from the limbus do we have from the limbus to the lens itself. What space do you have? For cornea clearance, what space do you have from the cornea to the lens itself? So that's, in simple terms, what they represent. So I'll move on this. And okay, good. So this explains the sagittal height. Now look at this. This is the same cornea, right? Different cornea diameters. Sagittal height for corneas of the same central radius. The cornea has the same central radius, but different cornea diameters. Now, if you have a look at this, what we call the sagittal height, which is very important, a very important parameter in fitting scleral contact lenses. As a matter of fact, in scleral contact lens fitting, the sagittal height is more important than the diameter of the lens. So from this part where the lens lands on the sclera, the height, if you draw a line horizontally to the height of the cornea, sorry, the height of the lens, gives you an idea the height of the reservoir you have. So this is 2.2840 micron, and look at the reservoir here, and this is higher height, sagittal height, and you have more reservoir here. So the higher the height, the more the reservoir you are going to have. So lens edge or landing is where the lens fits. So that's where the lens sits on the sclera and is helpful to improve stability, for comfort, and that's what the major I've explained for illustration. I think again that brings me to the need to edit this further, so we don't have repetition of some of these things. I've explained this. Okay, so I'll go straight to, again, I have to disclose that no interest for the, like Dr. Osazee did, no interest for the brand. But what is important in the brands for the scleral contact lenses is to consistently use the same brand. Although all the brands have same uniform things they expect, they contain. For instance, they have sagittal height, base curve requirements, clearance requirement, and all of that. All of them have that. But most of the brands will have different makeup of the lens. So they have different lens material. So some will have lens materials with better RDK, better oxygen permeability. Others will have materials with lower. There may be needs for you to change lens material because the patient is not comfortable at the end of the fit, and the patient is still having blurry vision. You've done other things, you've assessed fitting, and everything is fine. So the things to have to bear in mind. I think in the UK they use mostly the Signage eyes. I think that's common, but in Europe most of the other European countries tend to use the Europa. That's from the Visionary Optics. And then the Boston side tends to be common in the US as well. But what is important is to stick to one and look at the parameters they have based on what you want from that. And again, some of the brands have different diameter range that you can access, whereas others will have limited diameter range you can also get. So those things make the difference in the different brands. I won't bore you with this, so we're not marketing any of the brands. So again, stick to a particular model and understand the fitting methods. So the procedure, which is the most important aspect of this presentation, and I need us to pay particular attention to this part now. Now, in the fitting, there are three key objectives you want to achieve. You want to be sure that the lens is vaulting on the cornea, central cornea. It's not sitting on the cornea. You want to achieve complete limbar clearance. You want to make sure that the lens is not sitting on the limbus for most, mini, and full scleral contact lenses. Why do you have to avoid sitting on the limbus? Because the limbus contains the stem cells that help to regenerate the conjunctiva and even the cornea. So when you allow the scleral contact lenses to sit on the limbus, there's a tendency to damage the stem cells, and that can cause infection and other conditions that may not be intended in the course of your management. So align with the scleral conjunctiva. I've mentioned that again. So the RGP cornea fitting method cannot be applied to scleral contact lens fitting. One of the reasons is because the main thing in the RGP may be the diameter and the cornea curvature, but in this case, you are dealing with something else, especially the sagittal heights and the clearance, which is more important. Okay, as we move faster now, of course, you have to determine an appropriate candidate for this patient. I'm assuming everybody's still listening to me and you can still hear me clearly, right? Let me double check so I won't be talking to myself.
Yes, we can.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Thank you for confirming that. Okay. So again, you have to determine an appropriate candidate for the contact lens, motivation, all of that are necessary for you to do, and to be sure that the patient wants it. For instance, if a patient wants just a contact lens for something you think is not necessary, that other lenses may easily solve, and the patient can still get what he wants. That's okay if the patient is motivated and wants to get that scleral contact lens. But what is important is the motivation. External eye examination cannot be overemphasized. Very important to have a look at that. Cornea topography, and I think I need to pause to say here that for you to practice scleral contact lens fitting properly and efficiently, you need a topographer. In fact, that's one of the things you need. You need a topographer minimum. You need a good slit lamp. You also need to have OCT if it's possible. So these three equipment or pieces of equipment are very, very helpful and useful if you want to practice scleral contact lenses very well. OCT of the anterior surface is important. Pachymetry is also important, but you can get that from the OCT if you have. The refraction, you need to do refraction. And I need to mention something on the refraction when we get there, but refraction, not so much important, but as what you have in the other contact lens fitting. Over topography, very important. Lens diameter selection and power, very important. Choosing the right vault, the right clearance, that gives you an idea of the sagittal heights you need, very, very important. Slit lamp with fluorescein and OCT to evaluate and assess the clearance, assess the limbar clearance. If you don't have the OCT, you can make do with the slit lamp. but it requires more of skills to understand what you are seeing. In the case of slit lamp, OCT makes it effortless, makes it easy for you to see for yourself, and you won't have to struggle so much because it is almost explanatory. And selecting the material you want based on the decay value and all of that. Over refraction is more important than the refraction itself, because in the over refraction, then the tear layer is being factored in, and other things are also coming in place. So you need to know do the over refraction properly to be sure that the final precision you give the patient is something that can fit the patient for what they want. Over topography is also very important at the end. So determine the patient for it. I think I need to move on quickly. So patients who have these conditions will benefit a lot from. They are good candidates for scleral contact lenses. They are good candidates. I think I've mentioned that. We can't overemphasize that. Then, so cases of those dryness, severe conditions that affect the cornea. External eye examination, check for cornea staining. The reason you have to check for cornea staining is to be sure that the cornea doesn't have active infection going on that will also contraindicate what you are doing already. So check for appearance of the eyelid. You need to know that because you need to take a picture and see where the lens will have to sit on. If you don't want to take pictures, the manufacturers can do with other parameters they have. Check for signs of meibomian gland dysfunction. That can also be contraindicate. That can also contraindicate the fitting. Check for endothelial disease if possible. You need to do that to check for risk of corneal edema. So that should be noted. Corneal topography, very important. Scleral lenses are fit on sagittal depth, not on base curve. So you need to, if you have the corneal topographer, that can help you measure the patient's sagittal height. Do corneal topography to determine radius of curvature as well. Locate the steepest meridian. Topography will help to determine if cornea is prolate, oblate. I've explained all of these things. If they're symmetric or asymmetric, maybe one eye is oblate, thicker, more curved at the center. In the case of one eye is oblate, more curved at the periphery, and the prolate more curved at the center. So you need to be aware of all of these things so that you know what you are getting, because this is custom contact lenses that you need to know exactly what you're getting. It's not like something you're picking up from the shelf, over the counter. So for ectatic corneal pathology, start with a prolate. For post-surgical eyes, pellucid marginal degeneration or peripheral elevation, such as the Salzmann disease or condition, which in this case, that's about the opposite of what you have in the pellucid marginal degeneration, where you have the thinning and the bulging on the superior part of it. So you also have to consider the oblates, because now the cornea is not prolate, is not steeper at the center, steeper somewhere inferior or posterior. So you have to consider using an oblate design, which can be customly produced for you. So using a base curve, design the starting point for that, and OCT will give you almost everything you need in place of the slit lamp. So OCT will give you a picture of the cornea surface, the warpage, distortion of the cornea, irregularities on the cornea will be shown on the OCT. Pachymetry is also important to give you the thickness of the cornea and to give you an idea if you're dealing with a case of corneal edema or something related to that. So refraction, again, I need to mention, I said that refraction is not important as the over refraction. Why? Because the refraction may be distorted because of corneal ecstasias. So that may distort the actual measurement or actual refraction you are going to have. And again, that reservoir, the liquid reservoir, will also interfere. It's already an optic system already on its own. So that can also interfere with the power you get eventually. So that's why you need to be aware. Why it's important to mention refract, but it's also more important to do the over refraction, which gives you a clearer idea of what you're dealing with. So lens diameter, you need to get the lens diameter you want. The proper lens diameter should clear the limbus, but I think I mentioned that by at least 3 millimeters on all the sides of it. Corneal diameter and severity of corneal disease determine corneal diameter and severity of corneal ectasia determine the lens diameter. I've mentioned that before. So if you have ectasia and the ectasia is larger than normal, of course, you have to consider a larger diameter of cornea that can cover the protrusion of the cornea more. Select a lens diameter that is about 5 millimeters larger than the patient's horizontal visible iris diameter. So that can give you an idea what to achieve in terms of clearance of the limbus. Okay, I think our time is already fast spent. Let me see how I can move on a bit faster at this point. So choosing the right clearance or select the appropriate sagittal height is important. That is the most important parameter you need, because that gives you an idea of how much clearance, how much space you have between the lens and the cornea. The large vault creates excess tear lens. The more tear film you have between the lens and the cornea, the less the oxygen transmissibility, and the more likely you have fogging or blurry vision. So ideally, you should target to have between 100 to 200 microns of central corneal clearance. And you need to check that after 30 minutes of wear, of trial fitting of the contact lens, so that you'll be sure you're getting the exact assessment. Okay, so if you have how to determine the perfect amount of clearance you have. So this gives an idea how to determine the perfect clearance you want. So if you have a flat K, which is 44 diopter, and you convert to millimeter, which is dividing by 337.5, right? Or 328.5, that gives you this value. So if you do that, it can give you a starting point of what you need in terms of the base curve to use. And I'll explain this ahead now. So as a rule of thumb, what I need you to note here as a rule of thumb, there are other ways to adjust for the clearance. So if you have a clearance that is more, you can adjust it based on the base curve of the lens you are ordering. But more importantly, what is more important is to try fit and see the clearance based on assessment. There's a way to assess the level of clearance based on the thickness of the lens itself and the thickness of the tear film layer or the reservoir when you measure them or assess them using the slit lamp. And that's what I need to get when we get that. I think that's more important. Okay. So now in the overall refraction, permit me, I'm jumping some of the things because I believe we've done justice to them already, so we can maximize our time. It's already past 5 minutes past 6 from my time here. So overall refraction is more important because the spherical scleral contact lens can easily mask and compensate up to 350 diopter regular corneal astigmatism. That is very important. And when you have that on, usually when you have the contact lens on, usually corrects the anterior corneal astigmatism. Whatever is left may be residual that may be accounted for by the lens in the eye. Okay. So these are the things: over refraction, over topography. Over topography is used to determine the residual astigmatism. I've mentioned that. So at the end of the fitting, you need to check to be sure that you still don't have residual astigmatism that may be accounted for by the lens of the eye. In that case, you might start thinking of ordering for not just the regular scleral contact lenses, but the toric type that can accommodate for the astigmatism you have. So that explains that here in the what can cause that and how to address it. Dr. Hardy has done justice to lens rotation when you have to use the toric part of it and lens rotation and stability, which Dr. Osazee also built on that in his own presentation. So I won't bother you with this. Okay. Now the thing about scleral contact lenses in terms of disinfection and cleaning and wetting is because it's not the regular contact lens, is bigger and more care is already taken to be sure that the lens is properly cleaned, the lens is properly disinfected against. And because the thing about the lens, because it tends to be used a long period of time, it tends to gather proteins, gather all of the materials in the lens. So you have to clean thoroughly, and you have to be sure that it's properly disinfected. And most of the manufacturers will recommend specific solutions to use. But as a rule of thumb, most of them will use the RGP, the gas permeable lens disinfection is always recommended. But again, a good one you can use is the peroxide system. Is very useful alternative, and that's something you can also get. But most times, some manufacturers will recommend the particular ones to use. The cleaning, use alcohol-based cleaners may be useful. And soft contact lens, what you have to be careful here is that you do not use a soft contact lens solution to clean scleral contact lenses. The reason is because you can destroy the scleral contact lenses, because they come with specific, most of them are required to be used to use specific cleaning materials, which with specific concentration of the chemicals you want. So this is something Unisol is used, and these ones are also used. Now the insertion. This is a very last part of it, and we can start rounding up now. Now for lens insertion, one of the reasons people, practitioners, do not practice for scleral contact lenses is because of, or one of the reasons rather, that patients do not bother about that, or patients get discouraged wearing scleral contact lenses because of the insertion. It requires a lot of techniques, it requires a lot of skills, it requires a lot of practice for you to learn that. Because it's bigger, because it has to be inserted on the sclera, you have care is taken so you can apply it, you can insert it properly. So there are two methods, quick methods. So with practice, you can learn to insert it with your hands, with your fingers rather. But for beginners, it's advisable to use the plunger. Now, if you look at this plunger, most of the plungers will have a hole at the other end of it. If you look at this one, it doesn't have a hole. So for most plungers, for you to insert scleral contact lenses effectively, you should have a hole at both ends. At the other end, so where you drop the contact lens here, you should have a hole at the other end where the suction pressure can insert the lens on the cornea. I think I got a video to add to this. So I'll add it and repost this slide. That can be helpful for our listeners to watch. And I think if we're able to get the scleral contact lenses ahead of the lecture, ahead of July, we can even use our own video, so that can be more relatable than using the foreign videos. It looks as if we don't know what we're doing if we have to use the foreign video. So because of the difficulty in having to use the plunger as well, so some people recommend that you use the lens holder. In the lens holder, you just station the holder on the floor, and you ask the patient, station the lens holder, put the lens on top here, put your your liquid or your solution, that's the preservative-free solution on it, and then bend to have your face on the same plane with the surface of the holder, and insert. So we'll see what it looks like here. Look at what it looks like here. So you see the face is positioned in such a way that it's almost lying to the point that you can easily put the facing the plunger, that you can, the holder that you can, when you have to use a lens holder, you can now free two hands. Use free two hands. Look at the two hands are used to open the eyes, and then gradually bring your face down until the lens is inserted. Remember, be careful. You are not inserting the lens from the center. You are inserting from almost the inferior parts. And with a little blink, the lens, with a suction, the lens will now fit on the eye. So this is also another holder. You see the lens, the solution being put on the lens holder. You can bend your face and fit the lens. Okay, Dr. Chigi, how much more time do we have? Because I'm trying to maximize the time. I'm trying to see. This is almost 6:15. Do you think we can round up now, or I should finish up? So I have just a few more slides on the insertion, and let me have a look at that. Yeah, insertion remover, and fitting assessment. That can take us a bit more of the next 20 minutes to finish. What do you think? Do we want to complete it? Can I hear from you, Dr. Chigi? I hope I'm still being heard clearly.
Yeah, for me, I think we shouldn't rush that part because that's where the challenge is. For me, personally.
So do you think we should complete it next time?
Yes, because this part now, this is a major practical area.
Absolutely. I agree with you, Dr. Hunter. I agree with you.
So I don't think it's something we should just read the slide and scale through. Personally, okay. I think so.
Okay. Dr. Chigi, you are the one in charge. What do you think? Do you agree with Dr. Cynthia? This is a more practical aspect of it that we need to pay attention to and get it right.
I think Dr. Chigi is not online. I think network has taken it.
Okay. What do you think? Let me hear from others what you think. So do we need to sacrifice 30 more minutes to take it slowly and finish up, or come back another time and finish it? Because I'm wondering, I'm careful so we don't exceed our time so much. We're supposed to stick to 6 o'clock, and finish 6 o'clock. So we can also go about other businesses we have for the night or day.
I think what is remaining is still a lot. So can we leave it for another time?
Okay.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Dr. Williams, we can start from this another time. Okay.
Same with me, because I have another class to join.
Absolutely. So I'm conscious of that, so we don't waste more time. Okay. If Dr. Chigi is there, she can do the vote of thanks, or she can close. But does anyone have any quick question to ask, or any concern so far before we call it a night? Any question, any concern, anything at all? If you don't have for now, we can also use the chat, but we can use the WhatsApp platform to interact as well. Because I think what is more important in this preparation is interaction. We need all of us to, and I'm just being careful of the time, otherwise would have done more of interaction to ask more questions. So we'll be sure that.
One.
Go ahead, Dr. Karachi.
Okay, Dr. Chigi was trying to reach out to me. The network is bad on her end. Okay, a quick one. I wanted to know, you didn't make mention of pterygium. The cause of pterygium and open pingecula is something we see every day in our clinics. Are they good candidates for scleral contact lens fitting?
Interesting question you've asked, Dr. Karachi. Interesting question. So the truth is that you can actually fit scleral contact lenses on pterygium. However, it depends on the size of the pterygium. And it depends on how bad it is. So what you usually do is to fit it away from there are two options. Based on the research I made, I asked the question in the course of preparing for this. So the two options you have, the answer is yes, but a lot of things will have to be considered. You have to consider the size of the pterygium. You have to consider also how far the pterygium is away from someone saying something.
No.
Okay, so the major thing is that you have to consider the size of the pterygium, because if the pterygium is too big, that can distort the fitting of the scleral contact lenses on the sclera. Remember, the pterygium usually is on the conjunctiva, right?
On the sclera. Before it goes to into the okay, on the conjunctiva, you're right. You're right.
So,
yes.
because the part of the sclera we are referring to now is it not conjunctiva part?
Exactly. Yes. Yes.
So you have to be sure of the size of the pterygium, because in most cases, if the pterygium is very, very bad, the patient will struggle. You struggle to achieve stability of the fitting. So that's the major challenge. It's not like you can't fit it, but achieving stability is the problem. So most times, I think here in the UK, usually they have to take pictures. Of course, pterygium is not common here because of the environmental factors, but that's necessary to take pictures so the manufacturer can look at the factor that in the production. Any other quick question?
Thank you. Now, the other question I have is for Dr. Osazee, but maybe some other time, since the time is fast spent.
Okay.
My answer is that permit me to add to what you just mentioned.
Okay.
Sorry, background is a bit noisy. I'm actually driving.
Go ahead, Dr. Osazee.
Yes, we can. In fact, we can even fit contact lenses, specialty contact lenses actually for with even your regular cornea, like we call them, the smaller contact lenses. Okay, so there's what we call segment modification in contact lenses, whereby you have two different base curves. Okay, so you can have the regular base curve, then you can have another base curve for the outskirts. All right, so that can be done for cases where you have pterygium. So in that area when there's pterygium, you can signify that you want it to be curved in a particular form so that it conforms with the shape of the pterygium that you have. So don't just think that it's only in spiral contact lenses. Even in your rigid gas permeable contact lenses and all other forms of contact lenses, if it is very, very, very needed, you can fit it using more cost segment modification. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Osazee. That's a good addition. So the truth is that in scleral contact lenses, it is custom made. You can achieve a lot of designs. You can play around on the design and achieve a lot with it. So that's a good point. So you can tweak the curvature around to achieve what you want, achieve the fitting you want. So it's a good point you added. Thank you very much. Dr. Karachi, is that helpful? Dr. Karachi, I hope that helped to also add more information to what you asked for. Okay. Any other question? Otherwise, we can close now. Is there another question? Okay. If no other question, thank you again, everyone, for being part of today's presentations.
Sorry,
And
sir. Dr. Chigi was trying to reach me. Maybe she had a problem, so maybe I don't think she'll be coming back.
right, that's okay. We appreciate her. We appreciate her, and I know these things happen with online virtual meetings. Okay, so thank you, everyone. Let's not waste more time. We can chat more on the WhatsApp. Thank you, everyone. And I'm not sure, communicate to us next time we're meeting and how we can conclude this part. Thank you and have a great night. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Well done.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, Dr. Osazee. you very much. God bless you.